I'm going to show you how to cut a traditional pegged Mortise and Tenon joint. This is something that we use to cut entire homes, timber frame homes and barns, but you could use the same thing for something smaller like a gate or a landscape structure like a pergola. We tend to use very specialized, expensive timber framing tools, but I'm going to try to do it with more conventional carpentry tools so that you can do it at home as well. So I've laid out on this half of the piece a 1.5 inch thick mortise. That's 1.5 inches off of the layout face. You could also lay it off of a center line if you'd like. Next, I'm going to score the perimeter of the mortise just so that the drill doesn't tear out the grain around it. You don't have to be super precise on the scoring. You can touch it up later. I'm going to clamp the timber down to a bigger piece just so it doesn't move around. And I have 1.5 inch wide drill bit here, which is convenient. You could use something a little bit smaller, but it's nice to have the exact size. So we're going to drill 3 holes, 1 at each end and 1 in the middle. So now we're going to chisel out the waist and square up the mortise. So I have 1.5 inch chisel. Because the mortise is full of chips, I'm just going to pry out the chips. I've got the cheeks of the mortise pretty clean. I'm going to clean up the end grain. So now I'm going to check the width of the mortise with the framing square, which is conveniently 1.5 inches thick. That's what it was traditionally used for. It's a little tight, so I'm going to take just a tiny bit more off. Let's check the mortise width again with the framing square. That feels good everywhere. So now the mortise is complete and been checked, so we can cut the tenon. It's worth noting that we wouldn't typically cut the mortise and the tenon on the same piece. I just happened to grab a scrap piece for this example. So we have the tenon laid out on this side, which is the correct depth that we wanted. It's also 1.5 inches thick and 1.5 inches off the layout face. First, I'm going to make the end cut of the tenon with a skill saw from 2 sides. So now we're going to cut the tenon cheeks. The easiest way we could probably do that is by cutting several kerf cuts with a skill saw across the width. And then we'll chisel off the waist with the chisel. Now I'm going to use a chisel to knock out the waist, and then I'm going to pare down to the line. I might just... So I'm just going to get the big chunks out, and then I'm going to switch to paring across the grain. You want to pay attention to the grain is about all you need to worry about. Paring chisel here. We're pretty much right down to the line. That's a good surface. You could check it with a square or a combination square off of this surface. And I'm just going to give this tenon a little bit of taper so that it starts in the mortise easier. And then I'm going to chamfer the corner so that the edges don't catch. So now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to bring it right down to that 1.5 inch width. So we just completed the same thing on the other side. We kerfed it, chiseled it out, pared it down, tapered it, chamfered it. We also tapered the other edges here to make it go in a little easier to have it start. I happen to have a nice handy dandy tenon checker, so we'll slide that on. That's 1.5 inches as well. It goes on nice and easy. We're going to lay out a peg hole now. I'm going to go 1.5 inches off the shoulder using my framing square. Make a mark. I'm going to center it, which is going to be at 2 3/8. What I'm going to do is a little bit unique here and traditional. I'm going to draw bore the peg. So I'm actually going to drill right here, not at where it actually is at 1.5 inches. So the peg is actually going to bend through that hole and suck this joint tight. Okay, so we have our offset drill hole, offset our 1.5 inch line. I'm going to drill for a 3/4 inch peg. Okay. Then we're going to drill the opposite end here for the mortise, the peg hole, also 1.5 inches off the shoulder. So now we're just going to cut this piece in half so we can put our sample joint together. So we're ready to put it together now, and it should fit. So we make ribbon pegs that are octagonal. We actually split these, rive them from square stock. You could actually buy turn pegs as well. But we'll peg it together and it's all done.